In 1978, a woman in England wrote a letter that would quietly change migraine research. She'd suffered 50 years of migraines. Then she started eating 3 small leaves a day, and they stopped. Stay to the end and you'll learn what that letter led to, what real clinical trials found about feverfew and migraines, one strange withdrawal effect almost nobody warns you about, and how to grow this cheerful, self-seeding little daisy at home. The plant is Tanacetum parthenium, feverfew. A member of the daisy family, with small white-petaled flowers and a bright yellow center, and leaves with a sharp, bitter scent when crushed. The name itself is a clue. Feverfew comes from the Latin febrifugia, fever reducer. People have used this plant against fevers and aches for well over 2,000 years. Ancient Greek physicians reportedly used it for inflammation and pain. Through the Middle Ages, it traveled through European herbal medicine as a general remedy for headaches, for fevers, for almost anything that ached. But feverfew's real modern story doesn't start in ancient Greece. It starts with one woman, in Wales, in the 1970s. Anne Jenkins had suffered migraines for decades, the kind that left her unable to work or function for days at a time. A colleague suggested she try chewing feverfew leaves daily, an old folk remedy from her region. Within months, her migraines had nearly stopped. So she did something unusual. She wrote to a doctor at a London migraine clinic and told him what had happened. That letter is part of why feverfew went from folk remedy to formal clinical research. Researchers began actually testing whether this daisy could do what one woman's experience suggested. If someone in your own family has ever sworn by an old remedy nobody could quite explain, chewing a leaf, brewing a specific tea, stories like Anne Jenkins's are a reminder that folk knowledge sometimes turns out to have real chemistry behind it. So what did the research actually find? Feverfew contains a compound called parthenolide, believed to reduce inflammation and interfere with some of the biological processes linked to migraine attacks. Several clinical trials since the 1980s have tested feverfew specifically for migraine prevention, not for stopping a migraine already underway, but for reducing how often they happen. The results are genuinely mixed. Some trials found feverfew modestly reduced migraine frequency compared to placebo. Others found no significant difference. A lot depends on the exact preparation and dose used. That inconsistency isn't a failure of the research, it's often a clue that the product itself varies too much. Parthenolide content differs enormously between raw leaves, dried products, and commercial supplements. So the honest summary is this: feverfew has real biological plausibility and some supportive trial evidence for migraine prevention, but the evidence is inconsistent enough that no major health authority calls it a proven cure. Now, the part almost nobody warns you about. Chewing raw feverfew leaves, the original folk method, can cause something specific: mouth ulcers, lip swelling, and a sore, irritated tongue in some people. It's common enough to have its own name in herbal medicine: feverfew mouth syndrome. That's one reason most modern feverfew products are standardized capsules rather than raw leaves. The dose is more consistent, and the mouth irritation risk mostly disappears. Feverfew also belongs to the daisy family, the same broad family as ragweed and chrysanthemums. If you have known allergies to that plant family, feverfew can trigger a reaction. And here's the warning that surprises people most: stopping feverfew abruptly after taking it regularly for a long time has been associated with a rebound effect, headaches, anxiety, and joint stiffness returning, sometimes worse than before. It's mild for most people and it isn't dangerous, but it's exactly the kind of detail worth knowing in advance, the sort of thing worth mentioning if someone in your life has used feverfew for months and wants to stop. Feverfew can also mildly affect blood clotting, so the same caution that applies to many herbs applies here too. Check with a healthcare professional if you take blood thinners or are preparing for surgery. And feverfew is generally advised against during pregnancy, since traditional use includes effects on uterine muscle that make caution the safer default. For everyday, cautious use, feverfew is mostly encountered as a standardized supplement rather than a kitchen herb. There's no real culinary tradition here the way there is with thyme or garlic. If you or someone you know takes feverfew for migraine prevention, The product label and a pharmacist's guidance matter more than any homemade version. This is one herb where consistency of dose genuinely changes the outcome. None of this replaces migraine treatment prescribed by a doctor. Feverfew's place, if it has one, is as a preventive supplement discussed with a healthcare professional, not a replacement for diagnosis or acute treatment. Now for the part Feverfew is genuinely delightful at the garden. Feverfew is a hardy, low-maintenance perennial. Give it full sun to light shade and soil that drains reasonably well, and it will reward you with cheerful little daisies from early summer well into fall. It self-seeds readily, sometimes a little too readily. A few plants left to their own devices can turn into a small colony within a couple of seasons, popping up in unexpected corners of the garden. That makes it wonderful for a low-effort cottage garden look, but if you want to keep it contained, deadhead the spent flowers before they set seed and self-sow everywhere. Bees and small pollinators are drawn to the flowers, and the plant tends to bloom in cheerful waves rather than all at once, which keeps a border looking lively for months. There's something almost stubbornly cheerful about a plant that keeps blooming through neglect, heat, and poor soil alike, the kind of low-drama presence a garden benefits from having somewhere in it. Established plants tolerate drought reasonably well, and division in spring is the easiest way to manage a spreading patch or share it with a neighbor. So where does that leave the plant behind one woman's letter? Feverfew's story for migraine prevention has real biological plausibility and some genuinely supportive trials, but the evidence remains inconsistent enough that it isn't a proven cure, and it works, if it works, as prevention rather than rescue. Its most important cautions aren't dramatic mouth irritation from raw leaves, a possible rebound effect if you stop suddenly after long-term use, and the same allergy and blood-thinning cautions common to its plant family. And in the garden, Feverfew is about as easy and cheerful as a perennial gets, self-seeding, pollinator-friendly, and blooming for months with almost no fuss. And Jenkins never set out to start a line of medical research. She just wanted her migraines to stop. Her letter is a small reminder that some of the most useful scientific questions start with an ordinary person noticing something that worked. Familiar plants keep turning out to have stranger, more interesting stories than their reputation suggests. Plant lore after 60 will keep digging them up, one careful story at a time.